She wants you to be more vulnerable, and then she dries up when she is. Welcome to the Red Pill. Another Mids Watch, guys. You're gonna love this one. This is like a long time coming. Mostly because most guys who watch the Red Pill content on YouTube, they're here for two reasons. One, I want you to get slutty girls drunk and then kick them off your show. And then two, it's because how can she slap? But this is something a little different. This is for guys who actually deal with like women in real life, not that, surrogate of their bitch ex-wife. And so this guy is having a main event, and I'll go over what that means in a minute. And then talking about fights and feelings, but like the core piece to take away from it is validation. So I know if you've watched my practical female psychology episode, I talk about they call it the betaization process of men. It's essentially the 5 stages that a relationship goes through. A little bit of Evo Psych background. I won't bore you with the details. Just know first stage is called fitness testing. They check to see if it's the kind of man that gives me tingles. Then number 2 is to get him to open up and have his feelings, a way of locking him down. Number 3 is putting him to work. The whole point of having a husband is to get things done around the house, done in life, give you some social status, that stuff. Then number 4 is where nothing he does is ever good enough, and she starts to emotionally distance herself. Step 5 then is, he was always abusive. He never loved me anyway. Please save me from this thing. And she gets some other guy to pick up the thing, and the cycle repeats. As a guy, the only thing, the takeaway from you from it is to understand the process, to see if you're in a struggling relationship where you're at, and to understand that all relationships are temporary. We're all going to die alone. Learn to act accordingly. The main event, on the other hand, is after the process of dread. Man, there's a lot of jargon in this one, so it's going to be kind of like a dictionary definition start. But dread is, and depending on who you ask, I always talk about it like a branch swing. Branch swing is a turn where somebody leaves a relationship, but they want to lock down somebody else before they do. Same way as like a monkey will swing from one branch to another, but he won't let go of the branch he's on until he has the new branch in hand. So dread is the process of doing that, I argue, but with an olive branch. If the wife gets her act together, you go back and everything's great. Jack Ten of Hearts, another prolific writer, talks about it as the process of learning not to be taken for granted. And I would say either one is valid, and whichever way resonates with you, just go with that. All roads lead to Rome. The main event is after a process of dread where, and this doesn't always happen, but after a long process, making yourself your own mental point of origin, becoming more attractive, becoming less unattractive, the girl's initial impression of you, because she's seen you at your worst, she's seen all your bullshit, she's lost attractiveness for whatever reason, is now coming to terms with the fact that you've passed by her, and she's going to lose a really good man. And for a lot of girls, that creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of, dread. And so the main event is their Hail Mary play that they don't understand how to maintain this relationship and what they need to do to make you happy. It's called the mother of all comfort tests. That whole, where is this going? It's like that times 100. And a lot of guys think they have it, and they don't. Because if you have it, there is snot bubbles, there is tears, there is babbling like a child. It's the equivalent of the biggest deal ever. Imagine you were going to sleep with the hottest girl ever, and then she just disappears. It probably hits you pretty hard, but imagine if you're married to a guy who's top tier, you're hypergamous best option, you have a chance of losing that, and you don't know what to do about it. Girls lose their mind. So when I say these, I want you to keep that in the back of your mind when guys talk about their main events, because the most often example of what they think a main event is just a girl actively disrespecting them and giving them a bunch of congruence tests to see if all these changes are real or it's just a fake facade and she's reading things wrong. Field reports from a guy called Alpha Beta 49. He's been around for forever. I think he was a paramedic too. He was joined about the same time I did, and this was 7 years ago. So I love seeing these ones. His stuff's still around. It's great. So he's 27, married, 2 kids, under 3. He had an affair about 1.5 years ago. He's like, a friend of mine tends bar on Fridays, got around to making plans to visit next Friday. Thursday evening, I'm texting the bros, and the wife starts freaking out that I'm going to a bar to go meet girls. It went from shouting, and then all the way to begging not to go. And the more she fought, the colder he became. She just kept stating that she wanted her fears to be acknowledged and heard. The fears about cheating again. But he quickly saw the only way to hear her feelings was to not go to the bar. So he's like, I kept my calm, quite unaffected, and I didn't leave as soon as I could have, though. And I'm not sure why he had it, but just, it's a line bar for country dancing. Like, I'd be around friends the entire time. It's completely ridiculous. So Friday at work, she blows up his phone. Texts, calls the office phone, you name it. And it was mostly begging me to reply and listen to her feelings, which, again, not what she wanted. And he's like, I'm ashamed to say I caved. And so he sends a text to her. F it, I'm not going to go. Whatever. It's not worth this misery you're putting me through. You have allowed your fear to rule you and convince you that I'm still cheating on you. You believe that if only I don't go to the bar, I won't cheat on you. Fact is, babe, I could do this whenever the hell I want because that's the choice I can make. I choose not to because I value our marriage and I still think you're worthy of it. Plain and simple. But you getting your way in this situation does not lead to a happier marriage. Doesn't lead to a happier you, maybe, but not a happier marriage. Action always has consequences, and this is not going to resolve peacefully. This is the beginning of a division that will truly be painful. Your fear has caused you to disrespect me, made an issue out of nothing, and create a resentment. This is not building trust, but destroying it on both sides. That's a huge mess. You know what? I'll talk about that a little bit later. But that, yeah, first off, blowing up on text is kind of stupid, but this is not a good play. He added later, he's staying because she was neglecting the kids in her distress. And I know it was a big time fail. Please rip this apart because I know it deserves it. I talked to the bartending friend who's red-pilled already, and he agreed she lost control and I shouldn't shoulder the blame. Great guy, value his support. However, last minute I changed my mind, went anyway. Her parents showed up anyway, so we had childcare in case she needed a moment. I know this wasn't anywhere close to a save. I botched it, but I went to the bar, had a great time. And in the weekend, added some light flirting, which she ignored. Instead, talked about her feelings a couple more times. She knows not to try and talk to me about serious stuff past 11 p.m., yet she does it anyway and gets angry at me when I don't engage. And that's an area I need to work on, drawing a firmer boundary. I like this too. At some points in here, as he's writing it, he kind of figures out the self-awareness of the parts that he needs to work on. Anyways, he did some important connections on these conversations. She's not typical Western. She doesn't think the world revolved around her. Her father was abusive, and she resented him for it. He was too much asshole, too much alpha, and so when he drew the boundary, the feminist in her fights to the death. And when the feminist dies, the scared little girl comes out, takes responsibility for the whole thing to earn appeasement, and retreats into broken submission. I don't know how to handle that. Is it good that she submits like that? I'm disinclined to think so. So we had a decent phone conversation, she spewed more feelings, then she had an epiphany. Where she wasn't actually afraid I was going to cheat, but she just wanted her feelings that I was to be heard. What the fuck? Listen to her actions, not her words, gentlemen. So in an effort to bring her up to speed, I gave her No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's clinical and therapeutic enough that she won't be alerted to any weird hardcore red pill stuff to freak her out even more, and she'll get a better idea of where my newfound boundaries come from. And I call this our main event because along the way, she threatened that our marriage wasn't going to work. Which he said, yeah, you know where the door is. And then she stated that she sees me differently now, and it's by far the biggest throwdown since I've swallowed the pill. First thing here, if it's important, it's face-to-face important. Never have a fight over text. Never have a fight over the phone. Just hang up. Oh, she's going to get pissed if I hang up. Well, she's pissed now. So at least you won't have to listen to it. If it's important, it's face-to-face important. Women gain all kinds of emboldened off of text. And they use all kinds of fancy words from their fucking romance novels, so. Secondly, blowing up at that anger there, that's a problem. Why more please? Another great guy in this one. He talks about it all the time, where it's like, stop tolerating bullshit, start showing controlled anger. And in this case, for sure. The idea is, you're always going to win. Anger, violence, guys can always win. I don't mean legally. Obviously, violence is not the answer, but if somebody's going to escalate, you can always escalate one further. There's no chance you're ever going to lose a fight to your wife, so you don't have to have any fears of that, is what I'm getting at. And so if she brings the anger up to a 1, you bring it to a 2. If she brings it to a 3, you bring it to a 4. Basically showing you're not going to win this battle, so stop doing it. And then, if the wives are somewhat normal and short of some psychological disorders, they realize it's not a winnable fight. They bring it back down, you bring it back down. Remember, reward good behavior, don't reward bad behavior. Kind of plays into that. At the same time, it lets you know if these are kind of a frequent thing, that maybe you need to start picking more fights earlier for something called manufactured outrage. Basically, you're picking these fights just to have like a simulated version of it. You know, I'm not an asshole, but I play one on TV. That kind of thing. It tends to work out, gets the feelings out of their system, and it prevents you from having to constantly react to whatever bullshit happens at that time, right? The next part there, don't negotiate. But you know what? Enough of my opining. Let's get back to what we were talking about at the time. This is another one from Jack. He's like, I recommend you read When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, because this situation is exactly where you should deploy fogging. If you guys don't know, we'll walk about it here. 6-pack abs, 6 feet tall, and 6 figures income, or they will never get a date. The winning move in a shit test is always not to play, right? If you try and win the test, you're already conceding that you're operating within the girl's frame, where she can basically challenge you at will. Agree and amplify is generally speaking the best response to make it clear that you're not playing. Comfort tests really aren't any different. You pretty much never want to engage on the terrain that your wife has initiated her test from. You want to find higher ground. Now, agree and amplify is how you do this with a shit test or a fitness test. Fogging is how you do this with a comfort test. Now, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about here, a shit test or a fitness test is generally speaking when a girl is attracted to you sexually, and they have like an instinctive desire to kind of challenge that, like a sober second thought on their feelings. And the way to pass those is to agree with whatever nonsense whatever bratty behavior the girl's throwing at you, amplify it to show you're not taking it seriously. A comfort test is where a girl already has that desire, but then she's worried about how to keep you loyal, how to keep you around, right? How am I know he's not going to leave in the morning? Again, it's all limbic brain stuff. You can't negotiate this, and it takes a different set of things. And that's where all those unattractive things, you might hear guys on the internet calling it beta male, like that stuff actually has a purpose. It's for this part of it, because you can't have a relationship without some of these beta traits. Granted, a lot of guys have way too many and way too few like alpha or desirable traits to back them up. Think of it more like 80-20, desire to comfort. But in this case, he is one of the few guys that has a problem where he's like too much of the alpha stuff and not enough of the beta stuff. Which, hilarious, because I would argue maybe 1 to 2% of guys that I've spoken to in the Red Pill actually have this problem. But it is a problem. All roads lead to Rome. Everybody's thinking, just sprinkle alpha on your life, it'll make everything better. It's like, no, it won't. I can show you a dozen guys who show you exactly what the problems are. You have basically a bottle of neuroticism around there. Anyways, as you describe, your wife set up a phase dichotomy. She wanted her feelings heard, or false dichotomy. But you went to the bar. Clearly you weren't listening to her feelings, since how could you listen and still think it was appropriate? The false dichotomy was her terrain, and you stayed engaged with it the whole time. You know, we spend a lot of time in this place analyzing situations as shit test versus comfort test, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. You gloss over this a bit, but it sounds like you initially thought this was a shit test, and so you didn't engage. But this is personally why I always try to use agree and amplify in response, because ignore and don't engage usually requires some persistence. And this persistence will nuke a shit test, but will fail a comfort test. Whereas if you use agree and amplify against a comfort test, your wife will probably accelerate right into spewing whatever her hamster is thinking. And I would predict in your case, as additional agree and amplify's response would have led her to say something like, I can't believe you're joking about this, like you don't even care. I'm just stuck here wondering how many girls you want to fuck. And this is good, because at least you know the terrain, and you can find higher ground. He brings up an example of one of the original moderators too, Strategos Autocrator. Love the guy, nothing but patience for him. He's a name that's old enough that none of you ever heard of him. Anyways, he's posted repeatedly about this stuff, such as in one of his own main events. And I guess if we got time, I'll see what time we're running on here. I might actually go into that one a little bit. There's not much to it, but it's good to know. So my perspective is, this is how everything went south for you. You failed to recognize the terrain, shit versus comfort. Your reaction was a tactical error that prevented you from finding the proper higher ground, and so you were stuck on her terrain, trying to fend off her torrent of you're not listening to me. And Jack's like, you know what, this is my armchair psychologist opinion. She probably holds onto a lot of memories when her dad did some shitty abusive shit to her, and she just suffered in silence. She wonders if she bears some responsibility for the behavior, not just by being outspoken by how much harm the abuse was doing, but did he do these things because he didn't realize, or because he did? If I had really shown him how much he hurt me, would it have stopped? Hence the behavior towards you. If I don't tell loved ones their actions are hurtful, then it's my fault they hurt me. But if I tell them those actions are hurtful, then it's their fault they hurt me. Now, this could be way off base. I'm not a trained professional. I'm just some dude on the internet who read 70 words that you wrote about your wife's background and proposed a theory. But if I'm in the ballpark, clearly it makes sense why establishing boundaries make you feel like she's drawing an association with her abusively asshole father, and why you wouldn't like that. But unfortunately, that's her mental hookup, not yours. So in a way, it's not much different than my wife shit tests me constantly because she grew up seeing her mom constantly shit on her bitch ass dad, or my wife shit tests me constantly because her dad openly cheated on my mom and my mom always acted oblivious with the wife hatred or some other crap like that. So your question is it good that she submits like that? Well, no, it's not good. What would be good is if she had enough self-awareness to realize that she has some trauma and an unhealthy influence on her adult relationships and do what she needs to do to get a more healthy attitude, change her mental models. But can you do anything about it if she doesn't even realize it? Not really. So he's pointing out the part where Alpha Beta was talking about focusing on his self-improvement more than her shit test, out of balance. He's like, oh yes, I'm glad you recognize this. Your affair has dug you in quite the hole because an affair imposes dread in a way that doesn't increase your value. I'm going to pause here because that's important. When guys talk about dread, having sexual abundance, yes. But the thing is, if you just go out and cheat right away, and your plan is to like see if the marriage is good or not, cheating increases dread, or like the apprehension of losing a man in a relationship, without the corresponding increase in sexual market value. So I'm not saying it's not a tool, but just be aware. A lot of guys who early on just start blowing things up and sleep with the maid, you're actually making things worse. It's all smoke, no fire. So yeah, it imposes dread in a way that doesn't increase your value. So say you hit the gym, got ripped, got a promotion, upgraded your wardrobe. That acts as dread too, but you've also increased your value. So it's going to be really easy to pass the eventual comfort tests. A wife is scared her now hunky and rich husband's going to cheat on her, but the hunky and rich husband can tell her she's being ridiculous, no one turns him on like her, and in fact she's turned on right this second that he has to rip off her clothes and bend her over the kitchen table. And then tells her in the afterglow that he appreciates her. You know, that's easy stuff. But an affair? Yeah, you're going to have to go a longer road than some guys because you're going to get a steady diet of shit tests and comfort tests as you probably would expect. I mean, it's reasonable. And having the value that would help you mitigate these tests, you won't know when a slight uptick in self-improvement may inspire radioactive dread, which is why you'll be unable to mitigate it easily since, like I said, your self-improvement was only a slight uptick. All the more reason for you to get really good at fogging because I get the sense that you're going to have to be using this quite a bit. So it's kind of neat to look back through all this stuff. Strategist, by the way, chimed in because he was in a similar situation too. And he's like, yeah, I've come to rely on agree and amplify very well. It comes naturally, especially from the frame of I love life, I'm having fun. I welcome everybody that wants to have fun to do it too. So as you say, if it's a comfort test, it helps draw it out quicker. And he's like, I want to add too, on hindsight, that on the experience you cite of mine as our main event, that things did turn around after, that we are much happier. The main thing that changed after the main event was really me. I internalized that she couldn't get to me. I was strong, I had frame. If I was strong enough through that hell, there's nothing else that you can do. And he's like, I really internalized this. I believed it. And now she believes it too. And that in turn calmed her down a lot. So I feel like a different man. She treats me a different man. I'm just a different man. She's still a bitch from time to time, but I'm so comfortable in my frame, I can handle it much easier. And I'm vouching for this too. So like to sum all this stuff up, actually, you know what? Before I go to that part, the one thing is interesting. You know that whole girls would rather share a top tier man than be saddled with a loyal, like a beta, I think Rolo calls it. He cheated. She took him back. So there's value there. There's value. There's dread. Again, girls can move past this much easier than guys do because they don't treat jealousy the same way. But if you're that guy and you build up your dread from cheating, then you have a much different road than a guy who builds it up because he got a harpy wife that won't touch you. You basically created the dread without the corresponding uptick in value on your part, which allows you to handle this stuff much easier. So you actually have a harder road ahead of you. If you want it. You don't have to. In this case, yeah, the tools like agree and amplify and fogging become super important. Super important. It's like they were saying here, you can never tell sometimes if a girl is shit testing you because she's attracted and wants to make sure it's real, or if she's worried about losing you because you've already cheated on her before and it's a comfort test. And they look very similar, especially if you're in the game. So yeah, at this point, agree and amplify with what she's saying. You're either going to get, it's a fitness test, and she giggles and you guys smash afterwards and it's fun, or it's a comfort test, and then she thinks you're making fun of her for having these like emotional tirades, and then you end up drawing out her honest opinion and answer. And yeah, if you get to this point where it's like a big snot bubbly mess, then yeah, it might be a main event, which is the mother of all comfort tests. But again, if you've been practicing it well enough, if you have your agree and amplify and fogging on track, then when it comes, you're able to handle it. And like Strategos was saying here, it's not that she changes, it's that you finally internalized, you have frame, you fucking got this. So take this for what you want. Hope you enjoy it. Catch you guys on the next one. Cheers.